Aloha, my name is Rob Tonin, and I'm a research professor at the Hawaii Institute of Marine Biology. The University of Hawaii Sea Grant College Program, otherwise known as Hawaii Sea Grant, is based at the University of Hawaii at Manoa in Honolulu, Hawaii. Hawaii Sea Grant supports an innovative program of research, education, and extension services directed to the improved understanding and stewardship of coastal and marine resources of the state, region, and nation. This is Hawaii Sea Grant Podcast number 13, Research Beyond Shallow Waters.
Aloha, and welcome to our 321 podcast. My name is Mahealani.
This is Rachel.
Hey, it's Rob.
And I'm Lindsay.
And we are part of Hawaii Sea Grant and the University of Hawaii located in Honolulu, Hawaii.
This podcast features research supported by Hawaii Sea Grant. Each episode will highlight a new project and the people that make the project possible.
We will ask these researchers for 3 words that describe their research, give them 2 minutes to explain how their research benefits communities here in Hawaii, and end by asking them to provide one thing they know about each other than their research. So 3 words, 2 minutes, and 1 thing. It's a 321 podcast. I like to start these podcasts with very important questions. So, you guys ready?
Yeah.
Have you ever been on a submarine? And if so, was it yellow?
No.
Can we sing the song? Let's sing the
No,
song. Oh, come on. Marine scientists use subs for research, but instead of calling them submarines, we call them submersibles.
That's right, Mahealani.
Have you actually ever been on a submersible?
I have, actually. I've been on one of the Hawaii Undersea Research Labs submersibles here now twice. And actually, that is enough for me because I am not built to be on a submersible. I am too large.
Uh-huh. So, what are 3 words that describe your research?
So the first word I would use is linking,
I would say conservation.
and then finally management.
3 words: linking, conservation, management. Let's break down the words here. So linking, why did you choose linking as a word?
So I chose linking because we're linking both biological, meaning data on the organisms that we're studying, and environmental, or data about the habitat or environment in which those organisms occur. We're linking those types of data together.
Conservation.
So in this case, conservation, we're looking at these coral reef ecosystems that are in deeper waters, below where most people typically scuba dive. And we know from the news and from a lot of research that shallow coral reefs are in trouble around the planet. And there's a lot of hope that these deeper coral reefs, where they're down deeper, they're a little bit cooler, they have less light, may be a safe haven for coral reefs that are under threat from climate change around the planet.
And management.
So in terms of management, I think the first thing to consider when you're trying to manage an organism or a community is to find out exactly where those organisms or communities occur. So with our work, we're actually creating models that lead us to create certain types of maps that tell resource managers where these organisms are, and that allows them to make better informed management decisions.
We're learning about coral reef ecosystems beyond shallow waters in this podcast. And here to share their research are Dr. Rob Tonin and his graduate student, Lindsay Veazey.
Before we ask you how your research benefits communities here in Hawaii, let's talk about a few scientific words. So 3 words that you use a lot in your research are mesophotic, model, and benthic. Tell us what these words mean.
So mesophotic is, if we break it down, meso means middle, photic means light. If we think about the ocean, there's the shallow waters where most coral reefs exist and where we go scuba diving. Those are the euphotic or well-lit zone. If we go down deep enough, no light penetrates and we get down into the abyssal zone, which is the dark area. And sandwiched in between those zones, we have the mesophotic zone.
Okay, model.
Okay, so a model is a mathematical representation that we build on a computer, so it's not something that we're building with our hands. It's a representation of how different environmental variables may impact where and why we see certain organisms in particular habitats. And this allows us to predict whether or not we're going to see those same organisms in similar habitats that have not yet been surveyed.
And the last word, benthic.
Benthic is really simple. It means basically on the bottom of the seafloor.
Oh, you got the easy word.
If it's laying on the bottom, it's benthic.
So tell us in 2 minutes or less how your research benefits communities here in Hawaii.
Okay, so I think it's important to say, first, a lot of our information that we have about marine communities and coral reefs is sourced from scuba diving expeditions. So the lower limit of scuba diving is about 100 feet. So we have information from that first shallow 100 feet of the seafloor. And then we also have information from deep sea submersibles. And those things go to spots of interest way, way down deep, thousands of meters. Most of them are very expensive to operate. I mean, you're talking like tens of thousands of dollars a day to run these submersibles. So generally when those are funded, people don't want to take them to 110 feet. So
they want to take them all the way down.
Exactly, yeah.
To the deepest they could go.
Exactly.
Basically.
So we have information about that shallow zone. We have information about the deep zone. But then that middle zone, the mesophotic zone that's sandwiched in between those two areas, we actually don't know so much about it, relatively speaking. So our project is kind of a window into this middle zone. And we're literally going into uncharted waters here. We've created the first maps of certain coral and algae communities across the main Hawaiian Islands.
And having those maps of understanding where these communities are located really helps coastal managers when they're dealing with projects that people want to develop the coast, they want to build construction, they want to, say, lay cables between the islands. If we know where these coral reef habitats exist, they know to avoid them instead of just dropping it onto the bottom and assuming everything down there is mud.
So let's recap. When asked to provide 3 words that describe your research, you've said linking, conservation, management. You provided definitions for 3 scientific words that are commonly used in your research. These words were mesophotic, model, and benthic. We've learned about your research and how your research will help communities here in Hawaii. Let's get technical. How do you do your research?
Okay, well, first of all, the whole ocean has actually already been mapped. The problem with these maps is that they're really coarse resolution. So it's kind of just like a big blue splotch when you look at these different pixels representing the ocean floor. So what we're trying to do is improve the resolution of some of these maps around the main Hawaiian Islands. So we're actually trying to see what's there on the seafloor, see beyond that blue splotch.
So instead of a blue splotch, like, oh, this is actually coral.
Exactly.
Or this is actually sand.
Yeah, exactly. So the way that we do this is we build those models. What I'm doing is I'm using pictures of coral and algae of interest, and we've sourced these pictures from different submersible missions piloted by Hawaii Undersea Research Lab, as well as drop cams and snapshots provided by closed-circuit rebreather divers. We're combining these pictures with environmental data, which is sourced from instruments on board ships that tell us things like the depth or the sandiness of the seafloor, buoys or satellites that tell us about water clarity or wave action. So we combine these types of information and then we split the data half and half, using half the data to build a model. And then the other half of the data is set aside. So once that model is built, we can then test it on the data that we've set aside. And that's sort of a way to just test ourselves, test how good the model is performing without having to incur that extra expense of going out and collecting new data. Using these results, we can fill in the gaps on the physical map that we already have of the mesophotic zone around Hawaii. And that allows us to place where the corals and algae are most likely to occur in unsurveyed areas.
Well, that's a wrap. But before we go, we want to ask you, Rob, What's one thing you know about Lindsay other than her research?
Well, I know that Lindsay likes to go out and run.
Do you do marathons or 5Ks? What type of runner are you?
Yeah, I do marathons, but I have to say for this final part of grad school itself is a marathon, so there are none on my schedule right now.
Okay, well, Lindsay, what's one thing you know about Rob other than his research?
So Rob is a whiskey aficionado.
I guess we know where to go for whiskey. It'll be at Rob's house. Stay tuned for our next podcast, and mahalo for listening. Aloha.
Aloha.
This Hawaii Sea Grant 321 podcast featured 3 songs: Happiness by bensound.com, Ukulele by bensound.com, and Cute by bensound.com. Find it on iTunes or bensound.com.